like fluoridation, this, and people have no choice. So what has to happen is two things. One, people have to be educated about fluoride, say. And two, you have to get the government out of the way and let people make their own choices.
Our water supply not only has fluoride, but it has so many chemicals, toxic chemicals, pharmaceuticals dumped into it, and people drink it and they have no clue, absolutely no clue.
Steroids. Why do you think I'm a vegan? I mean, not simply for humane reasons, which is a lot of it, but I mean, my God, I mean, we don't want to talk about this because people may have just had lunch, but chickens.
Yes, I know.
Fish, livestock.
The agribusiness is a whole other subject, but
it sure is. But
it's a terrible, the agro-processors taking animals out alive. It's so inhuman, I can't even believe it exists on this planet.
Listen, one of my other hats is that I'm chairman of an organization called International Society for Animal Rights. And it's a humane education organization, and we do a lot of education on these very issues. I just wrote and edited a 120-page monograph on puppy mills and commercial dog and cat breeders, and we did another one on mandatory spay-neuter. I am not unmindful of the animal problems in this country, including agribusiness. And
terrible. The agro-processors. I was watching a quick news blurb on the television set of Sarah Palin. It was around Thanksgiving. They took this live turkey, they put it into a machine, and they grinded it alive right in the background. I thought I was going to fall on the floor.
What kind of a show is this?
It was like a news brief she was talking about turkeys, and right behind her, you see the turkey being grinded up alive in a machine. I'm telling you.
Oh, my God.
I absolutely came apart.
Oh, my God.
I absolutely came apart. And I started to talk to friends of mine about it. I can't talk about it too much. It upsets me so much.
Well, believe me, I know how you...
It's so disturbing. Can we move to the Gold Clause book and your seminal work with writing the first statute or legislation on the Gold Clause? Talk about it.
When Roosevelt and his cronies in Congress in 1934 illegalized the private ownership of gold, they had to, at the same time, illegalize something called the Gold Clause. And what the Gold Clause was then, and now is again, we'll get to that, the Gold Clause was a simple contractual provision which said that if I lend you $1,000, when you repay that, you have to repay me in dollars at which have the same purchasing power that when I loaned you the money. And we can do that in one of two ways. Either you can pay me in gold, which presumably the price of which would appreciate with as the dollar, as paper money became worth less, or you could pay me more paper money based on the value of gold at that time. In other words, it was a way for creditors to assure that they received back in what they loaned something of purchasing power equal to what it was worth when they loaned it. Okay, and that could be done in any kind of formulation. You could express that any way you like. And if you look at leases in that period, which was essentially post-Civil War when it began in the, let's say, 1870, you would find railroad bonds, and I have an old one here, which says that explicitly, that it's payable in gold. I have a $20 bill, the currency, $20, which says, pardon me, payable, redeemable in gold. You could take it down to a bank or the government somewhere, a Treasury Department, and you give them the $20 piece of paper, and they'd give you $20 worth of gold at whatever the price, $20.67 it was at that time. That was the provision. So when Roosevelt outlawed the private ownership of gold, they had to outlaw the Gold Clause as well. And it went to the Supreme Court, And the Supreme Court said, yeah, we know, and you're really not supposed to do this, but this was really a terrible emergency, so it's okay. So they held it unconstitutional, and the gold ownership and the gold clause were illegal at that point. When the movement began in the late 60s to restore the right to own gold privately, a corollary of that, connected to that, was what's going to be with the gold clause. So we got gold ownership legalized in, I guess, the early 70s. And then I was asked by Jesse Helms, who was then in the Senate from North Carolina, to draw legislation that would legalize the gold clause as well. It was really a Siamese twin arrangement. If you could own gold, then obviously you could use gold clauses. And I did, and it was introduced in the Senate, and a companion bill was introduced in the House by Phil Crane, and it was passed. In other words, gold clauses were re-legalized, or unlegalized, illegalized. And notwithstanding that, they, from then till now even, they are not widely in use.
And this is another thing that is of great interest to me. There are many, many people on Earth that want to begin to do metals contracts, to actually do business and use payments in metals, gold, silver, platinum. Many people want to use gold money at goldmoney.com, James Turk's organization. And this is very, very exciting to begin to monetize contracts in metals. But I've met very few people that, A, even know that they exist, and B, can work with them.
Well, the not knowing they exist is absolutely right. I was going to say it right on the money, but I accused of making a pun. But it's true. Most people are unaware of it. People who are aware of it, many of them don't know how to do it, which is silly because it's very easy to do. And some of them are afraid that if they did, it would be legalized again, which is, I think, very unlikely. And finally, as I've noted in several places in the past, including on my blog, I wrote a piece on this.
And also give us the name of your blog.
Well,
please.
that's www. Henry Mark Holzer, again, .blogspot, blogspot.com. There's an article there about not only whether gold will be illegalized again, but also, I think, a 5-part article on the gold clause. But the point is that, a lot of people who at first blush would look like candidates for the gold clause, in other words, creditors, people who would look like creditors, like banks, who would want a gold clause. They make a loan, say, in a mortgage, and they want to be sure that when, let's say a corporate note where there's interest for a year and then a balloon payment, the whole balance is due, say in 5 years, that they'd want to be sure that they'd get enough money back to equal the diminution of purchasing power during those 5 years from inflation or other government manipulation of money. Those people are not simply creditors; they are also debtors to somebody else, to some other bank or the Fed or the Treasury Department or China. So they, I think, if they've thought it through, are concerned about having themselves to pay back as debtors more than the face amount of the loan. You follow me?
Yeah, but one question keeps coming to mind about this is that in the actual application of doing a metals contract is that when you go to do a metals contract, you're still dealing with the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency, and therefore everything is weighted against that denomination. Mm-hmm. If, in fact, that denomination of the reserve currency is no longer a monetizable currency, which many people in high places feel and think is coming down the pike in not only in our lifetime, but in the next year, then how would one do a gold or silver or platinum contract without a reserve currency to monetize it?
Well, let's be specific and use an example, which I think will answer your question and inform your listeners. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you want to borrow $1,000 from me today. And